For untold ages, a quiet force has worked to suppress the frequency of your being, not through brute force, but by veiling your access to dimensions of consciousness you were born to explore. The ancient archives of soul memory, what some call the Akashic records, have not been lost. They've been hidden, shielded by layers of energetic interference to ensure that your subtle body never reaches its full capacity. While the world keeps you distracted and lulled into spiritual amnesia, a minority, an elite of sorts, pulls the strings of unseen energy fields, maintaining their grip on a reality you were meant to co-create. There are signals, however, that break through. Have you ever wondered why animals and children are drawn to specific people without any words exchanged? It's not coincidence. It's not charm. These beings still see with unclouded senses. They perceive energy as it truly is, not as it's presented. They sense the frequency signatures of those who've pierced through the energetic noise. Their instinct isn't corrupted by social roles or appearances. They respond to presence. Within you lies a network of subtle layers, your energy bodies, each functioning like a veil or lens. 7 in total, these bodies are interwoven and influence everything from your vitality to your capacity to connect with higher realms. But these layers haven't been left alone to flourish. They've been entangled in ancient patterns of control, seeded as far back as our earliest civilizations. Those whose frequency rises too high threaten not only societal norms, but a cosmic hierarchy that fears change. Your dormant potential is not an accident. It is the result of deliberate spiritual suppression. At the core of your being is something luminous, an intuitive wisdom capable of decoding reality on dimensions far beyond the physical. This has been numbed, dulled over time, leaving you disconnected from symbols that once spoke clearly to your soul. Your natural charisma, the kind that effortlessly peels away facades, that calls abundance to you, remains inert, lying dormant within your energy field. This is not because it was never there. It's because it was intentionally silenced. You hold within you a secret, a dynamic union, a fusion of archetypal forces known in tantric teachings as Shakti and Shiva. This isn't mere metaphor. It's a real, energetic interplay embedded in your cellular structure, though hidden beneath layers of interference. Few truly master this integration, but for those who do, reality itself responds differently. And yet, despite efforts to suppress this knowledge, it's found its way to you. That in itself is not coincidence, it's resonance. True transformation is never about adopting new beliefs or behaviors. It begins as a shift in presence, something unseen yet deeply felt. When a person raises their frequency, they undergo an internal rearrangement so profound it reconfigures their energetic architecture entirely. This transformation extends well beyond the body. It touches the mental, emotional, and higher spiritual planes. Mystics and esoteric scholars have spoken of this for centuries. Theosophy identifies multiple subtle bodies, the etheric, astral, mental, and what lies beyond, all existing simultaneously and affecting each other. Helena Blavatsky, in her seminal work, The Secret Doctrine, described the aura not just as an energetic field, but as a living record, a signature of your spiritual evolution. This field is always active, always in dialogue with dimensions you may not consciously perceive. According to Blavatsky, what we call reality is merely a sliver of what truly exists. Beyond the visible universe lie layers upon layers of energetic existence, most of which we are blind to. But these layers are not inaccessible. Through spiritual practice, through commitment to inner transformation, the subtle bodies begin to harmonize. The etheric body, which ties the physical self to the unseen world, strengthens in coherence. The astral body, which holds emotion and desire, becomes more stable, less reactive. In turn, this harmony leads to a reorganized energetic field, one that influences the space around it. There is architecture to this subtle realm, a pattern in the unseen. As your internal frequency stabilizes, your energetic body forms new structures, invisible to the eye, yet potent in their effect. This is not just ancient wisdom. Modern neuroscience is beginning to validate these ideas. Energetic fields can indeed extend beyond the body and interact with others, influencing their emotional and physiological states. Scientists now recognize the existence of bioelectromagnetic fields and the human heart, our emotional core, amidst the strongest of these fields. When aligned with higher consciousness, the coherence of this field increases, creating what is now referred to as an entrainment effect. This means your frequency can synchronize those around you. A person radiating this level of coherence doesn't need to speak. Their presence alone acts like a tuning fork. They recalibrate the frequencies in the room. Indian sage Ramana Maharshi embodied this quality, often saying little, yet sparking profound realizations in those around him. His presence was a force that bypassed words, affecting the deepest layers of others' being. This phenomenon isn't isolated to India or any one culture. Across spiritual traditions, be it in Himalayan caves, Sufi circles, Zen monasteries, or Christian hermitages, individuals describe the same thing: an encounter with someone whose presence shifts something within them, a sense of peace, clarity, a feeling of coming home. And here lies the key. This quality of presence is not reserved for saints or monks. It is cultivated through consistent, intentional inner work. Every choice to align your actions with your truth, every moment you meet your emotions without repression or indulgence, refines your energy field. This refinement is cumulative. Eventually, your presence begins to act as a beacon, not in the sense of attracting attention, but in resonating with authenticity so deeply that it draws others to their own truth. The alignment of your 7 subtle bodies becomes not just an internal harmony, but a signal, a broadcast to the collective field. Sensitive individuals will feel it instantly. Even those who are not conscious of energy will instinctively respond, opening up, softening, or simply feeling more grounded around you. It's like sunlight. You don't need to explain it. You just feel it. As more people awaken to this possibility, something incredible begins to happen. A shared field of frequency emerges, a morphogenetic field that holds the template for elevated human potential. Every person who activates their inner light adds to this field. It becomes easier for others to awaken too. You don't just change yourself, you become part of a planetary shift. This isn't just a poetic idea, it has tangible effects. As we refine our energy, our inner world becomes more reflective of truth, and this subtle authenticity reverberates outward. You become more than a personality. You become a node in a planetary web of consciousness, strengthening the collective evolution toward unity and coherence. But the path doesn't stop at vibrational elevation. The next stage is deeper, more intimate. It involves peeling back the layers of self-deception. Carl Jung described the persona as the mask we wear to navigate the social world. Necessary, yes, but also limiting. Blavatsky took this concept even further, describing these masks as energetically dense structures connected to the collective memory, the akashic layer of all our inherited patterns and ancestral trauma. The spiritual journey is a process of unmasking. We are layered beings like onions, with each outer layer representing an illusion of who we think we are, of what we think we want. We identify with roles, emotions, achievements, failures. These layers calcify in the astral and mental bodies, shaping how we experience reality. As you awaken, you begin to see these identifications for what they are, temporary, and as you let them go, your true nature begins to radiate. This isn't about becoming something new, it's about shedding what was never truly you. The ancient Egyptian mystery schools called this phase the trial by fire. It is symbolic of burning away illusion to reveal the eternal within. What's astonishing is how contagious this process becomes. When one person begins to live unmasked, it gives silent permission for others to do the same. People begin to confess things they have held back for years, not because they're coaxed, but because the energy of truth is so strong it makes pretense unbearable. It's as though the vibrational field of authenticity dissolves whatever cannot resonate with it. This isn't psychological manipulation, it's energetic alchemy. The more illusions you shed, the brighter your true self, your Atman, shines. This inner light, once buried beneath false identities, becomes the guiding force of your life. And it doesn't just light your own path, it illuminates others as well. In Buddhist teachings, this process is like polishing a mirror. As each speck of distortion is cleared, your consciousness reflects reality more clearly, without projection or fear. When this internal clarity stabilizes, you no longer need to persuade anyone of anything. Your being speaks louder than your words. People sense the stillness, the lack of hidden agendas, and they trust. Not because you ask them to, but because your energy makes lying impossible. Sufi mysticism calls this stage fana, the annihilation of the false self, followed by Baka, the subsistence in divine presence. The ego does not disappear, it is restructured. The self that remains is not a product of conditioning, but a vessel for the divine to express itself through human form. What seemed at first like a loss, the loss of your familiar identity, is actually a return, a recommunion with your eternal self. And this return sets off a chain reaction. Each awakened being becomes a mirror, a tuning fork, an energetic catalyst for others, not by shouting from rooftops, but by walking in alignment, silently amplifying the frequency of truth wherever they go. This is the beginning of a new planetary culture, one founded not on domination or control, but on coherence, presence, and deep spiritual integrity. As you continue the inward journey and strip away the layers that have long veiled your essence, a new landscape of experience begins to unfold. This is not an abstract promise or poetic metaphor. It's a real, perceptible shift in the way life responds to you. What you once perceived as static reality now appears as a dynamic field of mirrored responses, subtly shaped by your internal frequency. You realize, perhaps for the first time, that reality isn't fixed, it is responsive. And that responsiveness grows more precise, more immediate, the more coherent your inner state becomes. This phenomenon, sometimes described as energetic mirroring, is the foundational principle behind many ancient esoteric systems. When your inner being becomes centered and refined, the world doesn't just reflect that back, it adjusts to it. Coincidences, synchronicities, sudden insights, all increase. People show up at the right moment. Opportunities align with inner clarity. This is not magic. It is resonance in action. As your inner vibration stabilizes, you begin to recognize how much of the world you once experienced was filtered through a distorted lens, one shaped by unresolved emotions, inherited beliefs, and unconscious fears. These distortions no longer hold the same power. Instead, a deeper form of knowing begins to guide you. Not analytical, but intuitive. Not reactive, but responsive. It's as though an inner compass, long buried beneath noise, begins to awaken and point steadily toward alignment. This compass is your Buddhic perception, named after the enlightened awareness demonstrated by beings like the Buddha. Helena Blavatsky, in her esoteric writings, called it the Buddha body. Not a literal body, but a layer of subtle consciousness that bridges your personal identity with universal awareness. It's the domain of synthesis, where fragmented thoughts and polarized emotions dissolve, and truth is perceived as a whole. Unlike rational intelligence, which slices reality into parts to understand it, Buddhic perception unifies. It grasps wholes, it perceives essence, it feels without needing to explain. This level of consciousness is not something you achieve in the traditional sense. It emerges naturally as the lower energy bodies, your etheric, astral, and lower mental fields, become purified and harmonized. When these layers stop sending conflicting signals, the higher centers activate. One of the clearest signs that this perception is awakening in you is the emergence of symbolic understanding. You begin to interpret reality in a different way. Events that once seemed random now appear meaningful. A conversation overheard in passing delivers a message you needed. A recurring image in your dreams aligns perfectly with your waking realizations. These are not superstitions. They are signals from a deeper layer of consciousness communicating through the symbolic language of the soul. This is where synchronicity, as defined by Carl Jung, becomes more than a philosophical concept. It becomes a lived experience. Jung believed that deeply meaningful coincidences arise when the inner world and outer world reflect each other. When you are internally clear, the outer world becomes coherent. This synchronicity is your confirmation that you're aligning not just with your own purpose, but with a larger universal flow. And that flow is intelligent. It is not passive. It moves with precision, with purpose. When you're in resonance with it, you're no longer striving to make things happen. You allow, you listen. You act from alignment rather than from willful force. This is one of the most subtle yet profound shifts that occurs during spiritual awakening. The inner dialogue becomes quieter. The need for external validation fades. In its place arises a felt connection with the living rhythm of existence itself. As your relationship with the subtle realms deepens, you become more attuned to bodily signals that once went unnoticed. A sudden warmth in your chest, a chill across your back, a pressure in your forehead. These are not random sensations, they are messages. As neuroscience begins to confirm, the body knows before the mind does. Long before you reach a logical decision, your system already senses what is aligned and what is not. Dr. Antonio Damasio's work on somatic markers highlights how the body communicates emotional and intuitive knowledge faster than conscious thought. From an esoteric perspective, this bodily wisdom is the interface between your lower energy bodies and your Buddhic awareness. You learn to read the language of your own energetic anatomy. You understand that clarity isn't just an idea, it's a vibration, and your body is the instrument through which that vibration is interpreted. Through dedicated inner work, meditation, contemplation, ritual, or energy healing, you cultivate the ability to recognize these subtle cues. You no longer dismiss them, you lean into them. You allow them to guide you, and over time, this guidance becomes so accurate, so consistent, that it becomes second nature. You stop asking others for direction, because the clearest answers are always waiting inside. This inner navigation is what ancient traditions referred to as spiritual discernment, not based on fear or desire, but on frequency recognition. You walk into a room and immediately know what's true and what isn't. You meet someone and sense, within seconds, whether their energy aligns or clashes. Words become secondary, energy becomes primary. This level of perception is available to anyone, but it requires purification. It requires stillness. And perhaps most importantly, it requires the willingness to see without filters. The more you strip away internal distortions, the more accurate your perception becomes, not only of others, but of yourself. At this point in the journey, the ego does not disappear, but it begins to operate in service of something larger. The sense of I becomes less possessive and more transparent. You realize that the personality you once defended and curated was only a temporary mask, a necessary container for growth, but not your true identity. This is where deeper esoteric traditions speak of the transcendent self, a luminous presence beyond form, beyond thought. You begin to touch this presence in moments of silence, in nature, during sacred rituals, or even in the quiet simplicity of daily life. This self does not speak in words, yet it communicates in unmistakable clarity. It does not judge, yet it reveals the truth without hesitation. It does not rush, yet it is always on time. When this self begins to animate your life more fully, something remarkable happens. Your actions become simpler, yet more impactful. Your speech becomes fewer in words, yet deeper in meaning. Your relationships deepen not because you try harder, but because you bring more presence to them. You realize that just by being in your natural frequency, you can heal, inspire, and awaken others. This is not charisma, it is coherence, and coherence is contagious. You become what some traditions call a living mirror. Others can see themselves more clearly in your presence. Their masks begin to fall, not because you challenge them, but because your frequency makes falsehood feel unbearable. You don't demand truth, you invite it by being it. The theosophical idea of universal brotherhood now takes on a more visceral meaning. You begin to feel your connection not just with other humans, but with all forms of life. You sense your energetic link with trees, animals, rivers, and even the elements. You understand that consciousness is not a human possession. It is a universal force expressing itself through many forms. This intuitive oneness, this felt interconnection, is not theoretical. It changes how you live. You begin to treat life itself as sacred, not because a religion told you to, but because you can no longer deny the pulse of spirit in all things. You eat with more gratitude, you speak with more intention, you rest not out of exhaustion, but as a way to listen more deeply. Children and animals respond to this immediately. Their instincts are still intact. They gravitate toward clarity like flowers to the sun. A child may approach you with no words, just trust. A dog may rest at your feet, sensing peace. A bird may land closer than usual, sensing safety. These beings are not analyzing, they are feeling. And what they feel is the truth of who you are. This is the real spiritual revolution. Not a new system of belief, but a new frequency of being. Not rebellion against the world, but reconciliation with your deepest self. The more you live from this place, the less effort is required. Life unfolds with more grace, because you are no longer resisting its flow. You are co-creating with it. And here lies one of the most profound secrets, one hidden in plain sight by the world's mystical traditions. When your energy field becomes clear, coherent, and aligned with truth, you don't just walk through reality, you shape it. Not through force, but through resonance. Your presence becomes an agent of transformation. This is why spiritual teachers throughout history have often said very little. Their presence did the work. In the company of someone radiating coherence, the dissonance in others is brought to the surface. Not to judge, but to be healed. Not to shame, but to awaken. This silent alchemy is how real change begins. And it is this transformation, not knowledge, not ritual, not belief, that makes you ready for higher wisdom. As Helena Blavatsky and countless other adepts have said, esoteric knowledge is not withheld out of secrecy, but out of compassion. Power given to the unprepared can harm rather than help. Like trying to channel lightning through a frayed wire, it would destroy what it touches. So the ancient masters devised a system, a path of initiation, not in name, but in vibration. You cannot cheat it, you cannot fake it. The initiations happen naturally as your energy field becomes more refined, more stable, more true. Symbols that once looked like poetry begin to speak to you. Passages you once read without understanding suddenly open up and reveal truths tailored to your exact frequency. You begin to see that these texts were encoded, not to be exclusive, but to protect, to reveal only what can be integrated. A system of spiritual safeguarding that honors not only the seeker, but the sacred knowledge itself. The world is now flooded with information, but only a purified vessel can turn information into wisdom. This is why two people can read the same sacred text and have completely different experiences. One sees words, the other feels revelation. The difference is not intelligence, it is frequency. To prepare yourself for this deeper reception, small, consistent practices are often more effective than dramatic gestures. A quiet 10-minute meditation each morning, gentle attention to nature's cycles, a habit of journaling intuitive insights. These practices form the foundation upon which higher perception is built. Through these small openings, light enters. And once it does, it grows. Because light always calls to more light. And once your inner system learns how to hold it, that light begins to shape your thoughts, your choice, and your world. As you move deeper into the process of inner refinement, the invisible begins to feel more real than the visible. Your senses sharpen, not the 5 external ones, but the subtle senses that perceive the world behind the world. You realize that what most call reality is only the densest layer of a much broader spectrum of existence. And once you tune into these deeper frequencies, you start to perceive the vast web of energy that connects all things. It becomes undeniable that thoughts are not confined to your mind. Emotions do not stay locked within your chest. Every inner impulse, no matter how subtle, has a field of influence. What you feel, what you believe, what you expect, all of it moves outward, weaving through space and touching the fabric of shared reality. This is why inner work is never just personal. It is inherently planetary. You are not isolated. You are a node in a greater system, a cell in a living organism far vaster than the body you inhabit. And as your personal frequency rises, it sends a signal through that entire system. Others, without even knowing why, begin to shift. A friend becomes more open. A stranger is kinder. A relative starts asking different questions. This is not imagination. It is the invisible transmission of coherence. This transmission works through what some call morphogenetic fields, patterns of information that guide the behavior of systems across time and space. Think of it like a tuning field. When one instrument finds its perfect note, it helps others do the same. This is the true power of spiritual presence. It does not persuade, it harmonizes, it invites, it transmits possibility by becoming the embodiment of it. And yet, this journey is not about transcendence alone. It is about incarnation, bringing higher consciousness all the way into form. Many spiritual paths mistakenly chase escape. They seek to rise above the world, to abandon the body, to reject material life as a distraction. But the most profound paths call for integration, the union of spirit and matter, heaven grounded in earth. This sacred union has been known by many names. In alchemy, it is called the hieros gamos, the sacred marriage. In tantric teachings, it is the fusion of Shakti and Shiva, the divine feminine and masculine within every being. In psychological terms, Carl Jung spoke of integrating anima and animus, the the internal male and female polarities that influence every human psyche. These are not metaphorical concepts. They refer to actual energy dynamics. When your inner masculine, the part of you that initiates, structures, protects, finds harmony with your inner feminine, the part that nurtures, receives, creates, a powerful equilibrium emerges. This integration is not about becoming androgynous or genderless. It is about becoming whole. In most people, these inner poles are in conflict. One dominates, one hides. But when both are acknowledged, honored, and balanced, a new form of consciousness arises. This is where your energy centers, the chakras, begin to align in a way that allows higher intelligence to descend into the body. The ancient yogis understood this. They mapped it through the energy channels of Ida and Pingala, winding around the central channel Sushumna. When balanced, these currents activate the dormant potential at the base of the spine, the Kundalini, and it begins its ascent. This ascent is not just energy rising, it is consciousness returning home, and as it rises, it illuminates each energy center, dissolving the blocks stored in every layer of your being. Childhood wounds, ancestral patterns, karmic imprints, all of it comes into view, not to punish, but to be witnessed, integrated, and transmuted. True healing is never about forgetting or avoiding, it's about seeing clearly. When you begin to see your inner world without distortion, without judgment, you liberate energy that was once trapped in unconscious patterns. That energy becomes available for creation, intuition, love, and clarity. What once weighed you down becomes the very material of your awakening. This inner purification is what makes the body a vessel for higher light. As your field clears, your life becomes less about doing and more about being. You discover that when you are fully present, fully aligned, things happen with astonishing fluidity. You're not hustling for results. You're not chasing purpose. You're allowing life to unfold through you. And this state of allowing is not passive. It is deeply participatory. You are dancing with the cosmos, listening for its cues, responding with your whole being. You become a co-creator, not in the sense of manifesting desires from ego, but in the sense of serving a purpose greater than the mind can define. This service doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as a silent presence in a room, a wordless hug, a gaze that holds no judgment. Other times, it's a work of art, a decision made with integrity, a boundary held with love. Your spiritual power is not measured by what you say, but by the coherence of your vibration. And this coherence is not something you impose. It is the result of continual inner refinement. Every time you meet your fear with compassion, you raise your frequency. Every time you choose truth over comfort, you purify your field. Every moment you act in alignment with your deeper self, you anchor more light into the world. The ancient mystery schools taught this not through dogma, but through direct experience. Their rituals, symbols, and initiations were all designed to trigger remembrance, not belief, but gnosis, knowing from within. In places like the Eleusinian mysteries of Greece or the sacred chambers of Egypt, initiates underwent a sequence of energetic awakenings. These weren't metaphors. They were visceral encounters with the real forces that govern consciousness. Theosophists like Blavatsky and her successors understood that this path of initiation still exists. It doesn't require a temple or a robe. It requires readiness. Readiness, in the spiritual sense, means your frequency can hold the light you're asking for. Until that's true, certain knowledge remains veiled, not to punish, but to protect. As Manly P. Hall said, the secret is revealed when the seeker is no longer a threat to it or to themselves. This is why the deeper teachings of Tantra, alchemy, or theosophy remain hidden in plain sight. They are encrypted not in code, but in vibration. If your inner state matches the key, the meaning unlocks. Otherwise, the words remain poetic riddles. That's why two people can read the same page and walk away with entirely different understandings. The difference isn't intelligence, it's resonance. And resonance is cultivated, not forced. So, how do you cultivate it? You begin by turning inward, not with force, but with presence. Meditation, done regularly, becomes the soil in which your subtle perception grows. Not because it makes you calm, but because it makes you aware. You start to notice the layers between thought and being, between reaction and choice. You also start to notice synchronicities. These are not random, they are your curriculum. The outer world begins to mirror the exact inner patterns you're working through. A book arrives at the perfect moment. A stranger says something that unlocks an insight. A delay or obstacle shows you where your resistance lives. When you view life this way, every moment becomes part of your initiation. The more you trust this process, the more fluid it becomes. Resistance fades, fear loses its grip, and in its place arises a quiet, unshakable clarity. You begin to live less from effort and more from alignment. Your choices are no longer driven by survival patterns, but by intuitive precision. And the world responds in kind. People start to open up around you. They feel safe, even if they can't explain why. You notice that your presence brings calm in chaos, clarity in confusion, depth in superficial places. You are not trying to help, you simply are, and that being does more than years of effort ever could. In Theosophy, this state is called living from the higher triad, where your intuition, spiritual will, and higher mind act in harmony. It's not about escaping human life, it's about sanctifying it. You bring the divine into each gesture, each word, each breath. You also begin to experience time differently. Moments stretch, the future feels less fixed. You see possibilities more clearly, and the past loses its grip. This is not because time changes, but because your consciousness is no longer locked in its linear flow. You touch the eternal, even in ordinary moments. This is the beginning of what alchemists called the red phase, the final stage of transmutation. The philosopher's stone, so often misunderstood, was never a literal object. It is the awakened self, stable in its radiance, grounded in the body, aligned with the divine. It is the human being as a living temple. And as you embody this, you become part of a lineage, not by blood, but by vibration. A brotherhood and sisterhood of souls who carry ancient knowledge into a new age. Not through dogma, but through example. Not with noise, but with stillness. Not by preaching, but by being. You don't need to convince anyone. Truth doesn't need defense. It reveals itself in the way your energy feels, in the way your actions resonate, in the quality of peace that surrounds you. And so, the hidden work becomes the most important. The purification no one sees. The decisions you make in silence. The thoughts you transmute without recognition. These are not small things. They are the scaffolding of a new reality. As more beings undertake this path, the collective field shifts. The frequency of the planet responds. Coherence becomes easier. Healing accelerates. Systems built on fear begin to crumble, not because we attack them, but because we stop feeding them. You become a point of light in a global grid, a subtle but undeniable force contributing to the birth of a new era. Not because you aimed for it, but because you aligned with what is true. As the subtle work of transformation continues within you, you begin to notice that the external structures around you no longer hold the same authority. Systems built on fear, manipulation, and hierarchy become more transparent. You see through them, not in anger or judgment, but with clarity. Their spell begins to dissolve. What once bound you with invisible chains now appears flimsy, constructed from the projections of collective unconsciousness rather than truth. This moment of awakening, where old paradigms are exposed and new truths emerge, is not just personal, it is archetypal. Every great spiritual tradition has prepared for this moment. The veils are thinning. The structures that once held power are becoming obsolete, not because they are forcibly destroyed, but because a new frequency is rendering them irrelevant. And this frequency is emerging not from governments or institutions, but from individuals like you, from beings who have committed to the path of inner coherence. The silent revolution is vibrational. It spreads not through ideology, but through resonance. And every act of truth, every moment of alignment adds to the momentum. But this is not always easy. As you anchor higher states of being, you may find yourself increasingly sensitive to dissonance. Within yourself, within others, and within your environment. This heightened sensitivity is not weakness, it is refinement. And with it comes a responsibility to honor your own energetic needs. There will be times when you must step away, not out of avoidance, but out of preservation. Your frequency must be protected, not from fear, but from unnecessary depletion. Just as a young seedling needs the right soil and climate to grow, your awakened presence needs space to stabilize. Choose your environments with discernment. Honor the pull toward silence, toward nature, toward simplicity. And in that space, something ancient begins to awaken in you. a memory not of the mind, but of the soul. You begin to remember the purpose beneath your personality, the intention behind this incarnation. It doesn't arrive as a detailed plan. It arises as a feeling, an inner certainty that your life is part of a larger design, that everything you've been through, every wound, every joy, every challenge was preparation. This sense of sacred purpose cannot be forced. It unfolds. And when it does, it feels like remembering something you've always known. It's not ambition, it's not career, it's not status, it's service, offering your refined presence to the world in whatever way is most aligned. It may be through teaching, or healing, or parenting, or art, or simply by living with integrity. Whatever your expression, it is valid. The world doesn't need more performance. It needs more authenticity. And authenticity begins by listening, not to the noise outside, but to the signal within. That signal will always be subtle and yet unmistakable. It's the voice beneath the voices, the quiet impulse that guides you, even when logic disagrees. Learning to trust this inner signal is the real path of mastery. It won't always make sense to others. Sometimes it won't even make sense to you, but the more you follow it, the more life confirms its accuracy. Paths open, doors unlock, timing aligns. You stop chasing, you start allowing. This shift from seeking to receiving is monumental. It marks the end of struggle and the beginning of flow. You're no longer trying to manifest from the surface. You're allowing the deeper self to draw to you what resonates with your current state. You begin to live as a magnet, attracting not by effort, but by coherence. And as this coherence strengthens, your energy field becomes more ordered, more luminous. This is not a metaphor, it's measurable. Researchers studying heart coherence, such as those at the HeartMath Institute, have shown that when our thoughts, emotions, and physiological rhythms align, our electromagnetic field becomes more coherent. And this coherence influences others. It spreads. This spreading of coherence, of heart-based, truth-aligned frequency, is the invisible mechanism behind spiritual leadership. True leaders are not those who dominate or persuade, they are those who embody. Their presence speaks louder than their words. And when you encounter such a being, you know, you feel it. You remember who you are simply by being near them. But to reach this state requires more than meditation or intention. It requires deep integration. Every unhealed part of you will eventually surface, not to sabotage your path, but to complete it. The body stores what the mind forgets. And as more light enters your system, those denser energies rise to be met. This is the real work, meeting your own shadow with compassion, holding space for your pain without becoming it, welcoming the parts of yourself that were once rejected. When you do this, not as a performance, but as a genuine embrace, you create internal wholeness. And that wholeness radiates. The world is not healed by perfection, it is healed by integration. And integration means including it all, not just the light, but the wounds, the fears, the forgotten fragments. You become whole by welcoming everything you are and allowing it to align under the guidance of your higher self. This is what the ancient mystics meant when they spoke of the alchemical marriage. It's not just about balancing masculine and feminine energies. It's about reconciling all polarities, the shadow and the light, the body and the spirit, the known and the mystery. When these opposites stop battling and begin to harmonize, you become a clear channel. And through that channel flows something far greater than you. Call it divine will. Call it universal intelligence. Call it love. It doesn't need a name, but you'll know it when it moves through you. It speaks without words, acts without ego, creates without effort. And its signature is unmistakable: peace, power, and presence all at once. At this stage, you stop asking, "What should I do?" and begin to ask, "What is life asking of me?" You listen differently. You speak less, but with more impact. You no longer need to prove anything. Your presence does the work. And that presence is not static, it evolves. Because this path is not linear, it spirals. You will revisit old lessons, but from new levels. You'll see patterns you thought were resolved reappear, not as failures, but as deeper invitations. The spiral of awakening doesn't repeat, it deepens, and every turn reveals more of who you really are. As this process unfolds, a new type of memory activates, not from the brain, but from the soul. You begin to recall what the mind never learned. Ancient knowings arise, You remember how to work with energy, how to read symbols, how to hold sacred space. These are not talents to be learned. They are codes to be unlocked. And the unlocking happens not through study, but through state. When your inner frequency matches the resonance of sacred knowledge, that knowledge becomes available. This is why true initiation is always vibrational. It cannot be given. It can only be accessed. This is the basis of all esoteric transmission. The ancient texts, the encoded symbols, the initiatory rites, they are maps, not destinations. They are meant to guide, not to limit. And when approached from the right state of consciousness, they open. But if approached prematurely, they remain closed, or worse, become distorted. This protective mechanism is compassionate. It ensures that sacred power is used wisely. That knowledge is not just known, but embodied. That light is not just accessed, but anchored. And anchoring light is the task of this era. Not escape, not transcendence, but embodiment. To walk this world as a clear vessel for truth, beauty, and integrity is the highest service you can offer. Whether you are a healer, an artist, a parent, a leader, or simply a silent witness to the unfolding, your presence matters. Your frequency is part of the collective calibration. Every time you choose love over fear, every time you choose truth over comfort, you influence the field. Not through will, but through resonance. And this resonance creates a ripple, first in your own life, then in your relationships, then in your community, and eventually in the planetary field. This is how the new world emerges. Not through revolution, but through evolution. A rise in frequency, a shift in consciousness, one being at a time. And it begins with you. Right now, in this moment, the choice is available to pause, to breathe, to drop beneath the surface, to return to your center, to ask, not from mind, but from presence, what is most aligned? What is most true? The answer may be quiet. It may not come in words. It may arrive as a feeling, a knowing, a subtle pull. Trust that. Your intuition is not irrational. It is trans-rational. It operates from a plane beyond the limitations of logic. And as you listen, trust, and act upon it, it strengthens. This is your compass, your guide, your sacred technology. And it has always been within you. Now that you've come this far, you begin to recognize that the real spiritual path was never somewhere outside yourself. It was never hidden in a mountaintop temple or locked away in secret books. It has always been unfolding within your own being, each moment, each breath, each decision forming the curriculum of your awakening. And at its core, the path is elegantly simple, the return to who you truly are. This return is not a regression into ego or personality. It is a shedding of the false, a dissolving of all the roles and identities that once felt necessary to survive but no longer serve your soul. And with every layer that falls away, something deeper emerges. Not a new self, but the original one, untouched and eternal. This original self is not defined by your past, your culture, or your achievements. It is not shaped by trauma or by triumph. It is the witness, the source, the unchanging awareness that has watched your life unfold without ever being damaged by it. Some traditions call it the Atman. Others speak of the Christ within, the higher self, the divine spark. Words vary, but the experience is universal. And when you begin to live from that place, not visit it in moments of silence, but dwell there, you enter a different relationship with life itself. You stop reacting to what happens and begin responding from a place of centeredness. You no longer feel at the mercy of the world because you understand you are in active co-creation with it. Every moment becomes sacred, not because it is perfect, but because you are present for it. You could be washing dishes, walking through a crowded street, or sitting alone in a quiet room, and still feel the same current of divinity flowing through it all. You stop waiting for the extraordinary, because you have realized that presence turns the ordinary into the miraculous. And as this presence stabilizes, something else becomes apparent. You are not alone in this journey. All around you, others are waking up too, in their own time, in their own way. Some silently, others visibly. You begin to sense the emergence of a quiet global shift, not organized by any group or doctrine, but orchestrated by consciousness itself. A rise, a remembering. You feel this in glances exchanged with strangers, in conversations that suddenly go deeper, in the growing hunger for truth that can no longer be silenced by distraction. This is the rise of the collective soul, the return of the human family to its spiritual roots. And you are a part of it, not by accident, but by design. You did not arrive at this point by chance. You were called, and the call was not loud. It was subtle, persistent, like a soft voice in a distant room you kept turning toward, even when the noise of life tried to drown it out. That voice was your own higher self, your future speaking to your present, guiding you back home. And now that you are here, you are invited not to ascend away, but to descend fully into your body, your purpose, your relationships, your work. This is the path of embodied light, not a light that escapes the world, but one that enters it fully with clarity and power. This is the real meaning of initiation, not into some secret order or esoteric hierarchy, but into the direct experience of your own divine nature. The ancient schools knew this, and so they veiled their teachings behind layers of metaphor and myth. Because no one can hand you the truth, you must come to it through your own experience. And experience, real and unfiltered, is the greatest teacher. It humbles the intellect, softens the heart, sharpens the soul. Through experience, your knowledge becomes wisdom, your beliefs become knowing, your ideals become embodiment. This embodiment is the key. For too long, spirituality has been treated as something ethereal, disconnected from the body, from society, from the earth. But the new paradigm is different. It is grounded, embodied, practical. It is no longer about escaping to other dimensions. It is about bringing those dimensions into this one. You are not here to flee the world. You are here to bless it with your awakened presence. Every space you enter, every word you speak, every intention you hold becomes a vehicle for transformation. Not because you try, but because you are aligned. Your frequency speaks before your voice does. And so the question is not what you must become, but what you must let go of. What ideas of yourself are still tethered to limitation? What fears still whisper stories of separation? What shame or doubt still clouds the light that wants to shine through you? Let these fall away, gently, gradually, with compassion. You don't need to tear down your defenses. You need only stop feeding them. Let your heart expand beyond the small roles you once played. Let your truth speak, even if it trembles at first. Let your love become unconditional, beginning with yourself. For self-love is not vanity. It is recognition. It is the honoring of the divine spark within you. When you love yourself truly, you become incapable of harming others because you see them as extensions of that same spark. This is the root of universal brotherhood, not ideology, but perception. You see others differently now, not as personalities, but as souls in various stages of remembering. You begin to recognize the divine hidden in their eyes, even when their words are harsh or their actions misguided. Compassion arises, not from superiority, but from understanding. You've been there too, and the only difference now is that you see more clearly. This clarity creates peace. Not the kind that avoids conflict, but the kind that sees through it. You stop fighting shadows and start illuminating them. You meet life as it is, not as you wish it to be. And from that meeting, change becomes possible. True, lasting, graceful change. You may begin to feel a sense of mission, not in the heroic sense, but as a quiet inner directive. A subtle knowing that your life has meaning beyond survival, beyond comfort, beyond personal gain. You are here to contribute something unique, something only your soul can offer. And this offering need not be grand. Sometimes it's a song, a smile, a piece of writing, a loving presence. Sometimes it's the way you raise your children, the way you move through a system without being consumed by it, the way you model integrity in a culture obsessed with image. Your vibration is your message, and your life is your temple. Each moment is a prayer, each breath a consecration, each step a chance to bring more light into form. And if ever you doubt this, return to the stillness. Let go of the noise. Listen, feel, trust. The guidance you need is already within you. It's been there all along. It speaks not in force, but in frequency, not in arguments, but in alignment. It leads you not through pressure, but through peace. And it is calling you now, not to strive, not to perform, but to remember. To remember who you are, to remember why you came, to remember that you are not a mistake, you are not behind, you are exactly where you need to be to take the next step. That step may be quiet, it may be bold, but it will be true. And truth, when lived, reshapes everything. So, Go forward, not as someone who has figured it all out, but as someone who is willing to keep listening. Let your life be your initiation. Let your presence be your offering. Let your vibration be your legacy. And know that you are never alone in this. All around the world, others are awakening, not to the same path, but to the same presence. They are remembering too. And together, a new field is forming, a living web of light, anchored in human hearts, rooted in the earth, stretching across the sky. You are a part of this web. You are a spark in this great ignition. And your light, your authentic, unapologetic, unfiltered light, matters more than you know. If these words resonate, they do so because they reflect something already alive within you. A seed of truth, stirring, opening, ready to grow. Water it with presence. Nourish it with love. Protect it with discernment. And trust that what you are becoming is exactly what this world needs. Now more than ever, you are not here to be fixed. You are here to remember your wholeness. You are not here to fit in. You are here to radiate. You are not here to seek light. You are here to be it. So, breathe, open, and step forward, not into a role, but into your true self. You've always known the way. Welcome back.